Let's see. That young lady right there.
I know you kind of touched on this in the last question.
Speak up just a little bit.
I know you kind of touched on this on the last question, but my dad's been Iraq a couple times, and I know after 9/11, I was one of the people that was really scared. And I was just wondering how you plan to get the fear out of Americans like that put us in Iraq in the first place.
Well, look, we are a certain dose of fear is healthy. I mean, we need to understand that Al-Qaeda would happily blow up this building, men, women, and children, if they could. In their warped way, they would think that they'd be making a political statement. And so we have to hunt them down. But here's the way to think about it. I spoke to Richard Clark. He's one of the foremost experts on terrorism. He was the Clintons' chief terrorist advisor. And advisor about terrorism. I don't want anybody to misunderstand this. And this is the problem when you run for president. There's no ambiguity about what you say. But he describes, I think, the facts fairly accurately. You've got maybe 30, maybe 40, maybe 50,000 hardcore jihadists, hardcore, ideologically driven terrorists who want to do us harm. Then you've got 1.3 billion Muslims who basically are just trying to live their lives, raise their families, and who historically have looked up to the United States. But after Iraq, had great doubts about the United States. And so what you've done is you create an environment in the Muslim world that is much less sympathetic to the United States, even among people who have no desire to engage in terrorist activity. So our job on the military front is to pinpoint and go after those 30, 40, 50,000 who could try to do us harm. And we should hunt them down and roll up their financial networks and use intelligence and coordinate with other countries. That's task number one. Task number two is strengthening our homeland security, which we still have not fully done. Making our ports more secure, making our first responders better equipped, making sure that our chemical plants and nuclear plants are properly guarded. And I have to say, this is where special interests have prevented us from doing it. I mean, the chemical industry, the petrochemical industry, has resisted many efforts to impose more security on them, despite the fact that if a chemical plant was targeted, it could cause devastation in urban areas all across the country. And that's just because they lobbied and they provide, campaign contributions to members of Congress. And the public should be educated about it, and we should overcome any special interest resistance in order to implement the kinds of domestic and homeland security approaches that we need. So those two things have to be done. But here's the thing. What is probably going to be most important for us long term is to regain the trust and the cooperation of the 1.3 billion Muslims. And the way to do that is to show America at its best, to help build schools in poor countries where right now the only education that kids may get are education at madrasas, to help dig wells in countries that don't have drinkable water, to deal with public health infrastructure so people are getting help with HIV/AIDS. When we send that message that we are concerned about them and their security and their well-being and their bettering their lives and their children's lives, then you will see, I think, much more cooperation in terms of the military aspects of this terrorist threat. America's at its best not when it's fearful. I mean, if you think about our history, our most shameful times have been when we were afraid. Now, that's when the McCarthy era came out. That's when we interned Japanese Americans. historically, the civil rights movement, a lot of the reason for resistance in giving African Americans their full rights was fed with fear. And so we've got to, we need a president who projects the confidence of America, our values and our ideals, and knows that, as someone once said, that those who would give up their liberty in exchange for their security will end up with neither. And that's what's going on here.